Hello and welcome to my review of The Entropy Effect, a Star Trek novel by Vonda N. McIntyre. This book was published in 1981 and was the second in the pocketbook series that began in 1980 with the adaptation of the motion picture. According to the internet, these books were numbered, but my UK edition bears no evidence of that. McIntyre, like James Blish, who wrote my previous foray into Star Trek novelizations, had won both a Hugo and Nebula award before writing this, winning both for Dream Snake in 1978 and a Nebula for 1973's Of Mist and Grass and Sand. There are some pretty big names in sci-fi who have contributed to the Star Trek catalogue over the years, including Greg Bear, Anne C. Crispin and Diane Duane. Can you imagine a world where you actually had to have some sort of qualification to write for these enormous franchises? I talked in my video about Spock Must Die about how Blish didn't expand the TV format to give any of the side characters any extra development. McIntyre notably does, greatly expanding the role of Sulu, giving him a first name, Hikaru, which would later become canon, and also giving him a love interest. The girl, yes girl, in question is a new character, certainly new to me, perhaps not to Star Trek aficionados, Lieutenant Commander Mandala Flynn, who treads the Mary Sue waters quite finely. Another new character, the mononymous Hunter, an old flame of Kirk's, dips a toe or two into the same waters. The second character is oddly prominent for a non-crew member, especially as the book works towards its finale, and seems largely superfluous really. Two new characters given this level of prominence is perhaps one that the book could really have done without, especially if it would have meant further development for Chekhov or Uhura, for example. I'll discuss the plot and there will be spoilers ahead, Captain. The Enterprise is investigating a singularity when they are summoned by the highest priority code to a mining colony where a scientist and former tutor of Mr. Spock's has been arrested for testing weaponry on sentient beings. Spock's investigation of the singularity is interrupted, his work to that point rendered unusable, and the Enterprise limps along suffering numerous malfunctions caused by damage from the singularity. At the prison planets they meet Hunter, who both Kirk and Sulu are in awe of. Sulu, after some reluctance due to constraints of time and ship life, also begins a romance with Flynn. Hunter is a pilot and leader of a fighter squadron on the Klingon frontier, a dangerous place to work. Thinking his career will stagnate on the Enterprise, Sulu transfers to Hunter's squadron. After initially grumbling about prisoner escort duties, Kirk and crew set out with the prisoner, Dr. Mordro, to a penal colony. They are accompanied by Braithwaite, Mordro's prosecutor. Due to the damage to the warp drives, they're travelling on impulse only, so the journey will take a little while. Later, Mordro appears on the bridge, accuses Kirk of betraying him, and then shoots and kills both Flynn and Kirk. Spock and Bones begin an investigation, ruffling the feathers of both Scotty and Braithwaite in the process. In the end, the two camps seem at odds, with Braithwaite accusing Spock of both murder and attempting to steal the ship. Spock, meanwhile, has adapted Mordro's weapon, which is actually a time machine, and he attempts to set what he feels is a divergent reality back to rights. The first half of the book is quite slow, setting all of this up. The Flynn-Sulu relationship is given centre stage, which will please fans of old-school Sulu. The second half picks up the pace quite admirably. Spock's investigation and interaction with his previous mentor becomes the focus, along with Braithwaite's interference and Bones' attempts to keep things running smoothly. It's pretty well handled and would have made for a solid original series episode. McIntyre handles Scotty well, considering the precarious position she puts him in of doubting his friends and falling into the Braithwaite camp, even if not wholeheartedly. Him suddenly turning completely against the old crew would of course have been preposterous, but McIntyre handles it pretty well, introducing a few seeds of doubt along the way. This is not a long book, 220 pages-ish, so it's interesting to see it filled with so much going on. The two major new characters, there are a few others in the security team that are given a little exploration as well. Hunter and Flynn are both reasonable additions with the minor quibbles already mentioned. Flynn is a little too well regarded by the more known crew members and has too many love interests, especially given her acknowledged shortness of temper that leaves her, on page 85, too angry to do the basics of her job. Rather than use her communicator, she walks through the Enterprise in an extremely urgent situation because she was too angry to talk to any of her people anyway but face to face. However, her interaction with Sulu offer her character some redemption. They teach each other martial arts, and there are explorations of backstory and culture that I think Trekkies will enjoy, even though this section of the book is quite one-paced. Hunter is broadly similar, being hero worshipped by Sulu, and she's not just an old flame of Kirk's, but somebody that proposed marriage to him not once, twice, but 3 times, and was rejected 3 times. Interestingly, the marriage that she proposes is a contract-bound group pact, a partnership family that, while given less description here, is very similar to the concept expounded by Heinlein in Friday and every other book he wrote after 1960. Actually, Friday is also dedicated to a number of women, and one of them is Vonda. Hunter returns to the Enterprise after Kirk's death and acts in a rather officious manner. She may well be the highest ranked officer in the absence of Kirk and Spock. I don't know how Starfleet or the military in general would work in similar circumstances. Hunter certainly has no mandate to even be on the Enterprise, so assuming control, bypassing all of the Enterprise's other officers in the process, seems out of place. Even more so given that she has arrived halfway through a crisis and barely investigated its cause. The second half of the book, I think, would have functioned pretty well without her. I picked this out of the hundreds of Star Trek books available, partly because I was interested to see how McIntyre handled Kirk, especially because I felt that Anne Crispin in her Han Solo trilogy didn't quite get her lead right, and it definitely feels like she's not a fan given that she kills him about halfway through. Prior to that, he regrets the failure of his relationship with Hunter due to his usual behaviour, and later bemoans his own immaturity. So I think it's fair to say she's not a fan of his womanizing either. It's all summed up on page 210 when Hunter muses that their relationship might have worked if only he were a completely different person. To McIntyre's credit, he doesn't feel as un-Kirk as Blish's incarnation, and the rest of the crew seem well handled as well. Though it is a little disappointing so much time is given to new characters that Uhura and Chekhov don't appear at all until nearly halfway through the book. The time-travelling shenanigans aren't quite perfect either. Spock travels into the past to prevent a future he can actually stop without time-travelling at all. As it is revealed, Kirk has been murdered by a Mordro from the future. It seems more in keeping with Spock's logic if it simply thought of a way to resolve the problem by planning something in the present. That said, his time-travelling is in part what contributes to Scotty's mistrust. I do think that McIntyre takes it a step too far when it turns out that, as well as a time-travelling Mordro, there are Mordros from different realities in play as well. But that's a pretty minor thing, and McIntyre deserves equal credit at least for the steady build-up of conflict between the two camps on ship, and for Spock and Bones' reaction to Kirk's death, as well as what will happen to them if they rewrite the skewed timeline. Unlike Blish's overwritten exchanges, these feel very in keeping with the original series. Old school Trek fans will, I think, enjoy this. It's a time-travelling, sciencey mystery whodunit without a single photon torpedo launched in the whole book. If you're raised on JJ Trek and are looking for a book about lens flare and planets being destroyed, you might be a touch disappointed. If you're looking for something in keeping with the original series, then I think you might be pleasantly surprised. As always, this is the moment that I suggest you live long and prosper, as well as clicking like, subscribe, and watching some of my other videos. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.